The stock market's irrelevant now. $1.5 trillion was lost from the market today. Not true. That money didn't evaporate. It went into someone else's hand.
Right.
No big company raises public capital. It's all private capital.
At all.
100%.
I have to consistently remind myself, it's not my job to behave like these people, how they're living right now. It's to learn how they behaved when they were where I am right now.
The more money that's printed, the less valuable it is. If you're sitting in cash, you've got a depreciating asset.
There's a lot of crazy shit happening politically. There's a lot of volatility. Is now the time to buy into assets?
I'm not one to like respond to ads, but if I didn't know Justin, I would buy his book from his newest ad.
It says hearing that.
The guy that quietly built wealth is now showing everyone else how to do it. I was like, dude, I love it. I was like, well, I've hearted it. I don't even heart stuff. So for me to even heart it, I'm stingy.
I appreciate it.
What's even better is Justin has no idea what ads are running or what goes out at all.
And what's cool is like my book and Justin's book on two of the lists are like, you could see them on the same screen.
Oh, that's cool.
Amazon.
That's cool.
I'm selling more books. He's making more money. So I think that he's winning, but still.
I feel like I should learn some stuff so I can write a book.
You should
totally write a book. You know all you need to know. Write a book.
I don't want to write a book. Not now.
I like writing.
I want to make more money and then write a book, I guess.
I'm telling you, it can be fun where, you know, right now I think you feel like it's a job.
Yep.
But
I do.
It can actually be a therapeutic process where instead of writing or typing, which to me seems like agony.
I like that.
You do like it, and you're a good writer. I actually like, my strength is talking. So I just dictate everything. Mm-hmm. I'll just record myself speak, hey, I have this idea, and I'll just iterate. I'll just record, and I'll be walking around in nature, and that to me, I get.
And then who takes it from there?
So the AI transcribes it, and then I can send it on to an editor.
Well, here's the deal. Like, your life was good before your book. Your life's even better after.
Correct.
Look at the relationships your book has built.
For sure.
Like, you know 100%. So many great people because you've shared all this. And like, again, that's why I love the ad. Like, you did quietly do it. You weren't flashy. You weren't like, you're not over the top talking about you're so subtle about it until someone gets in a real conversation. And it's not like you're bragging about what you do, but you have the depth of knowledge and you're like, oh, damn, this guy like knows it. Right. So I just think that it's like watching your community grow. That community doesn't grow without that book. I like the brand. I like the book.
That's correct.
Your 10 rules. Like, if I would have known those 10 rules in my 20s, I'd be wealthier. Just like your whole, like, so it's house money, get the money off the table as quickly as possible. I think of how many investments I could have done that with and didn't do it with and how it bit me. So, and the fact that like you wrote a financial book that I 100% agree with, and I wrote financial books that you own. I would say that
I do.
Probably 99 out of 100 people that read our books would disagree with something in our books, but we both agree with the statements that each other makes.
Well, I think the other significant thing about Justin is that he's not on a podium preaching that this is the right way to do it. He's saying, this is my path. If you want to invest from a lifestyle investment perspective, which is what I wanted, this is what you should do. And it basically, every opportunity for contest, he'll be like, yeah, no, that's a fine path too. You're going to have a different outcome, but it's a fine path too.
What I love about the example too, for the Justin Fest here that we're about to go on, is that he was masterful at not letting lifestyle creep take over.
Yeah.
Like, even when
he bought my fucking used car, bro.
Bro, I mean, the thing is,
it's a nice car. When he was brand new, if he was buy your car,
I love this.
It's a win-win.
He was financially independent before a millionaire.
It was a huge win.
That's amazing. And then you kept going, which is such an advantage. When you're financially independent, you have a 10 times advantage over someone who's not, because they're still stuck in I'm saving 10% of my income. And then 90% goes to everything else. You're like, cool, 100% of my income can build more assets.
That's right.
And so if you're like, how did you get that far that fast? Is that you, instead of when you got there, said, cool, now I'm going to explore my lifestyle. You're like, now you've got your own sommelier and you're traveling, but it's well within your means.
It's not even pushing the edge of within the means.
No, it's not even.
It's ridiculous.
Right.
Like I said, he bought my fucking used car. He's multiples of me, and he's buying my used car while I buy something doper, which, by the way, I'm pretty fucking frugal. So like, it took me many years of making a lot of money, relatively speaking, to spend any money on a car.
Yeah, I was different than that. I bought a commercial building when I was in my 20s. It was 45,000 square feet. I owned 45% of it. And it was winning like architectural awards, and it was a little bit of a stretch for where I was.
Yeah.
And so like, I looked bigger than I was.
Did it bite you?
At the time?
I kind of
just more because of my partner.
Yep.
Yeah, because of the partnership. You know, I didn't have the money to buy it out when the partnership
more
when he couldn't handle it because he had too much real estate. And if I would have been more liquid, I could have just bought that out for super cheap. And it was like, it just wasn't a good decision to be 100% owner at that time.
Yeah.
And yet it was fully, rented at that point, and it had a good cap rate. It had all the things, but it was like, because he was going bankrupt, it was like, it was cash offer at that point. And I was like, man, like it moved fast. There was no getting financing.
So that's an interesting sort of like overarching question of, do you stretch a little bit to put yourself in a position where you potentially create motivation that will drive you to work harder and make more? Or do you, knowing that that's a good opportunity, or do you say, hey, this is going to put me in an uncomfortable position and push me too much, and I might be out over my skis?
My problem with pushing too much is you make bad decisions for the people you serve, because now it becomes about your survival and not your service. And so I didn't like that whole notion. It's almost like Boiler Room, where he's like, act as if, and buy the vehicle before you can afford it. And it's going to force you to, and like salespeople get in that trap a lot of times where like they spend optimism. This is a good month. Next month will be better. And so they constantly run that red line. Now, at the same time, I know that Justin, you reallocate funds quickly into investments. So your team's like, why don't we sit on that longer?
Yeah.
And you're more like,
sure,
because I want more assets.
That's right.
So that's where that line is, I think that, and especially like me being married with kids, I pushed too hard, too fast. And I didn't really have an end in sight. It was just like more real estate, started a fund, I was just doing all this, and it was just consuming so much time. And now I'm looking at it going, what does that cost me from a lifestyle standpoint? And will I be able to be present? Like I just hit the point where I don't want any more lifestyle investments from a standpoint of like, I bought a home. It's beautiful. Like, I don't want anything more than that. I bought this cabin. It's amazing.
You want to real estate.
Yeah. Right. So now like I bought a second cabin because I was like, well, we have more people sometimes than I can handle the cabin. So I buy a second one, and now I'm going, maybe I should sell it because it's more management. I have to hire someone to support with it, which means I have to manage that person. And so for the first time in my life, I'm like, I don't think that more is better. I think actually less might be like more, because now I have time off. Now I can travel without worrying about it. Now I have one less employee to manage. So
I love that. And the flip side of that is like Justin and I were just talking about this the other day, because Justin basically pushes everything to assets. In the last several years, I've just been sitting on cash, just like stacking cash and sitting on it. And the flip side of that for me, or how that's manifested with me, is that I feel like I'm fucking stupid because I'm sitting on cash, which is making nominal returns.
You don't feel that stupid right now, though, do you?
I feel pretty good right now, but I still feel like, if in this moment in, April of 25, sitting on cash, you can get 4 to 5% just sitting, which is better than my lifetime with cash sitting.
Very true.
Literally in checking accounts with Schwab or something.
Literally in checking
4 or 5%.
Accounts. Yeah. And it's not making 10 or 15 or 20.
Right. Because this is where stewardship comes in, sitting in cash. Like I just remember there was a time where I was comfortable with cash because my business growth was there. But then when I saw like 2020 happen and I could see quantitative easing, I was like, I have to allocate capital now.
For sure.
Because the battery life on my cash is being dwindled. That cash is becoming worth less. So I've got to deploy it to assets. That's why I bought the cabin I bought. And that immediately went up substantially in value. But I was also utilizing it and enjoying it. Yeah. It wasn't really a cash flowing asset. It could be. Well, my wife's like, we're not going to cash flow that. Yeah. We're not letting other people in there. And I'm like, cool. And then I have this mentor. I'm going to see him tonight. And they mentored John Fetzker, who used to own the Detroit Tigers and became a billionaire. And he lived in the same home his whole life. And I was like, I don't want to live that level.
Yeah.
But I was telling my wife, I'm like, what if we said we lock in our lifestyle where it is? We're pretty much doing what we want to do, mostly when we want to do it. We have everything we want, other than one thing that I just don't know that the juice is worth the squeeze. A private jet.
Right.
I just don't know, even if I have the finances to handle it, is it worth it?
Yeah.
Right. Because that's a big burn.
We're going to be talking about that tomorrow night.
We're all in that boat.
Yeah. I mean, that is the one thing, so in my life today, I think I'm moving towards more simplicity than anything. And I just think everything we've talked about are trade-offs, right? So like being aggressive, well, I think the younger you are, the more aggressive you should be when you don't have dependents, when you don't have, those sorts of things. But it is still a trade-off.
A bump in the road doesn't have the same issue.
That's right. And sitting in cash, like there are a lot of benefits to that. Yeah. The trade-off is maybe you're not earning as much, but it gives you optionality, right? Whereas whenever I'm in cash, I feel like I need to put it to work. Like I don't like sitting in cash because, I feel like I'm not earning you're an investor first, and then lifestyle came after. He's a business owner first,
right?
So
there's a little different kind of viewpoint there. And I look at like my investments now. I have 10 books, and I look at those books as a piece of real estate. And so I'm always like, you look at Killing Sacred Cows. It came out in 2008. It's still on the list.
Crazy,
because I'm still putting it out there, and I look at it like a piece of real estate that in 2023 I rewrote the whole thing. I cut out 30,000 words, added investor DNA, and it started coming back into the lists. And because I'm like, if you own real estate for that long, you're going to paint it, you're going to change out the carpet, you're going to update it. So why wouldn't I take this asset that's still performing and give it a facelift? And you gave Lifestyle Investor. You updated that book.
That's right. Yeah. I added 30% more content.
But I love it.
You cut and I added.
Right. So for me, I'm like, cool, I can live where I want and my books can perform. I don't pay taxes on it unless I sell. There's no location dependency. There's just so much benefit to it. And now I'm looking at my other book that's more popular than 9 of them combined.
Wow.
One book, which I thought was a throwaway when I was first writing it. I never expected it to be as big as it was. And now I'm licensing that to other people because I think I can make it a monster financial book and compete with the biggest ones that have ever existed with bigger distribution. Because now I give a license to one person. That probably represents at least 1,000 or 2,000 books sold per person. So imagine I do 500 of those in the next year. 500 times 1,000 or 500 times 2,000. That book all of a sudden is one of the biggest financial books of all time.
Well, think about it. It's digital real estate, right?
Exactly.
And today, and today's day and age, like that IP becomes just as valuable or more valuable than other things. I mean, Naval Ravikant in his tweets, like if you look at Eric Jorgensen's, version of putting that together, he's going to be at our event next week, which I'm excited about. But, he did such a great job, Naval and Eric, at crafting this message. But if you pay attention to the underlying themes of it, it's like, hey, you actually need to monetize you can digitize and create IP around your ideas, your brand beyond just your business.
You can right now. So I have 2 questions and I want to talk about. Well, we have 2 questions here, right? One is the path of exactly what you just said, and how long is that really going to last, where you can monetize your own IP from an educational perspective and your brand, and what happens with that. The other, before we get there, because I think that's a longer conversation, is we're talking about, sitting on cash and diving into assets and, going into May of 2025 right now is now the time to get out of cash and deploy into assets. There's a lot of volatility. There's a lot of crazy shit happening politically. Is now the time to buy into assets, or do you think we're going to slide down?
Depends on the type of asset.
Well, real estate for me.
And I think
I'll let you speak to that.
Yeah, and I think like foundationally, the premise of how I invest is going to simply be based on this: as monetary supply expands, so do asset values. So if you're sitting in cash, you've got a depreciating asset. If you're in assets, other real, tangible, digital, or real estate, real assets, they're expanding. So part of my reason, so it's not like...
Can you use other words for that are less confusing for retarded people?
Yes. So...
I like the R words just coming out.
I was talking about myself, so it's fine. Also, no, it's what's funny about that is that usually when I use the word retarded, I use it literally, and I very, very consciously don't use it derogatorily to mean stupid. I literally use it in the sense of the process is retarded. In this case, I just slipped and thought it was funny.
Well, what I'll say about it is, like in more layman's terms, the more money that's printed, the less valuable it is. So if it sits in assets are going to appreciate or expand in value. The inflation
helps that asset.
Yeah, right.
As the dollars, are printed or expand or whatever. And it's just going to continue to happen. There's no way we can get out of it.
Are you using leverage or not using leverage too with that much cash? Because no leverage, as long as you have a horizon, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Like, because if you buy an asset that can go down in value temporarily, but it's desired location, it's going to come back. Now, I want to talk about books for a minute, because the first argument I have in favor of books, even with AI being so making knowledge just free, and succinct, is there's a nostalgia. Just like I buy vinyl, I have records, and people still. You go on vacation, people are reading books on their flights and in their chairs, and they have them on their nightstand, and they have them in the back. Like there's something about the intimacy of that, and it's also the physical copy means that you don't have something interrupting you. When you're reading from a phone, it can interrupt you at any time. When you're watching a video, it interrupts you at any time. So I think there's something of that. The second thing is we can take our books and put it into the AI and actually have AI start being us in a form of like giving answers because of that body of work. I do think as time goes on, the more people use AI to do too much of the writing, the more homogenized it becomes and the less unique it is. But like he's using it to supplement it so that it sounds like reading instead of speaking. So that's a great tool for it. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that I already have it.
Yeah, I think.
And I'm going to use humor for my next books. So I think that makes it even more useful because I've written this manuscript. It's 20,000 words using humor to teach finance. I think that that's going to be useful because the pictures that are going to be illustrated and it's easy to read and it can appeal to a different.
I agree with all that right now.
But I don't know
all that for the next 2, 5, 10.
I don't know. Yeah, maybe less.
But after that period of time, I don't know that any of that's relevant. I think that there's still going to be this. I think we had the transitional phase.
We're still going to want to live in a physical property.
Well,
but we may not want the digital.
You got it.
Things.
Yeah, I just think there's a huge question mark around what knowledge means, what credibility means, and what that transition path looks like. Right now, there's a big question of, like you just said, if you spit it into one of the AI engines, it's clear.
I still have old people that are going to read it.
Well, that's
younger people won't.
Well, and think about the whole idea of raving fans. You have a ton of raving fans. So when you build up that audience, and you have it because of your podcast, you have people that, they're all in. They're bought in. So you produce more content. They want your content because you have a relationship with them, or they feel connected to you and have a relationship with you. So the argument of it being extinct in time, like I get that what AI can do. Now, I do think there are niches where AI is never going to touch it, or for a long time isn't going to touch it. But you can tell AI writing versus a real human writing.
For now. Well, so I went and spoke at this event. There's 2,000 people there. I put a QR code up. I gave them an amazing free download of 5 amazing tools. 17% of the room took it. They bought 500 books and had it at a booth. This booth was a major convention center in Orlando. It was almost 3/4 of a mile to walk to the booth. 4 hours and 20 minutes, I signed books. They had a drone filming the people.
420 on purpose?
I just thought that was great.
Having gone through.
My wife was born on 420. It was perfect for her. But I was like, even today when I finished speaking, I used humor. And now that I use humor versus my intensity of old, I get approached way more because it's just, and then they want their book signed. If I'm giving something else, less people come up and talk to me because they're taking an artifact with them. Yeah. Even if it's old, even if it's an antiquated way, there's something about, I wrote it, they have a signature in it. Maybe that'll change, but for now, I think it's got a little bit of legs to it.
Oh, it definitely has legs to it. I mean, there's no question about it. It's just we've seen in the last, a huge, probably 20% of our audience at Easy Pay Direct are people that sell education, right? And it's in every possible vertical, from financial to real estate to
the client. Yeah, so
you are
pointed at me.
So
it's getting slaughtered.
That's what I'm saying.
Education's getting slaughtered.
People should.
Like all these online marketers are getting crushed.
That AI school here in Austin has people 3 grades ahead already. 3 grades ahead. It's an AI school. AI is doing the teaching.
Say more about that. I don't know that.
I just heard about it, and I even just saw that like China's going to make it that they have to learn about AI in school. But I was just talking to this guy that created a ton of private colleges, made hundreds of millions. His whole thing is he wants to have a thing called the Great University. So your teacher's Socrates for philosophy, and you're having a one-on-one experience, but you actually get a degree at the end. So just think about how much time in school is wasted with people that, teachers that are tired, they're dealing with students, they're going from textbooks that are printed that are now out of date. Like when I went to college, our nutrition class taught the food pyramid. I was like, what the hell? Like, we know the food pyramid is garbage, and they were still teaching it because how long does it take to get the updated information and reprinting? So,
and get it through the government to allow that to be the book that's taught.
Yeah. So if all of a sudden you're learning and AI sees your pace and then goes to the next thing, you can skip ahead so much faster because it's cutting through all the noise and all the conjecture and all the, tired teacher and all that kind of stuff. Yeah. So I don't know a ton of detail. I just heard about it because I just flew here and they're like, oh, did you hear about this school? So I don't really have the citations for it.
No, but the I think logically the path is, without question, all kids, all humans learn differently. Yeah. And so there are brilliant people that will not sit and read a book for 600 pages, but can integrate the knowledge from the book if they can interact and ask good questions and get to the answer faster than reading through all of the foundation.
The new version of ChatGPT. So I was doing a masterclass last week. And I just, for fun, I said, write an emotional close about the Rockefeller method using my voice. And what it spit out, I just copied and pasted, forgot that I had done that. I was going to go back. And I was like, I just read it. We had a 43.11% upsell take because that was the thing that I used for it. I was like, that's crazy. I've never had that high.
Which is higher than
I've ever had. I've never had that. And I just didn't even modify it. I just read the script. I was like, that's insane. And then one of my clients was like, hey, I asked ChatGPT to describe you. Here's the paragraph. I was like, holy shit, I couldn't come up with that good copy about how to describe myself. It was phenomenal. So like how fast it's advancing. Because the first version, I used to do videos, me versus ChatGPT in finance. And I would just crush because it's all just homogenized, lowest common denominator, Dave Ramsey kind of garbage. And I was like, I'm just going to go after it. It's getting better and it's getting better fast.
Yeah. Yeah, no question about it. I just think about it in terms of the business model. Like I think about, if your business model is education in a platform, how long will that last? Yeah. And there's always a question of, I think historically there has always been a question of, did you hit the timing right for the business model? Right. And we're in a very
Facebook, hitting the right timing.
Everything, MySpace was long before, right? Friendster long before Facebook. Did you hit the timing right? And by the way, MySpace sold for $1 billion to Google. So I think, right?
Yeah. Well, think about the Concorde, that airplane. Remember how fast it could get to London? Then it had an issue, and so they had to revamp and they had to fix it. And you know which day they relaunched the Concorde? September 11th, 2001.
Oh, shit. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So it went bankrupt. That's just bad timing. Right? And so there is an element of that with anything you're doing. Even the right relationship has such an element for something advancing. And I think the two industries that are already done are attorneys and teachers.
Oh, God.
It's over.
Yeah.
I sat on a flight next to a brilliant attorney, someone I know that I've referred to, and the entire time he was using AI to write the plans. And I was like, well, now what I do is I use ChatGPT with all the prompts, and then I send the document to the attorney to see what I'm missing. Yeah. So now my last document, I set 30 minutes aside with the attorney. We were done in 21 minutes and everything was done. So think about how much money I saved. The agreement I had before was $900 and it was simple. And I could have done it with GPT with somebody like, oh, you missed this. And do you really want that?
And that's cheap. I went to attorneys for a contract that Justin and I have talked about. And I came back with a $12,000 bill. And I was like, hey, calm the fuck down. I was like, first of all, you can't send me a $12,000 bill without letting me know that you're going to go into that crazy.
You need some Vaseline before
you out of here. Yeah. and I still haven't heard back from him. But second, yes, you can digest a bunch of that earlier. But if you know nothing about it, then you're putting a lot of faith in the robots.
I just switched banks because of AI. Because the bank I was at, I looked at their cybersecurity. And I talked to someone that owns, that runs a private division, like for the ultra high net worth people. And he's like, that bank spent this much. We spent $8.7 billion as a bank. Do you think your money's safe over there? And by the way, we're exposed to 1% for commercial lending. They're exposed to 35%. Wow. And I was like, okay, I'm moving today.
Yeah.
I was like, damn. Because I was like, it's just going to be interesting because I even wonder what's going to happen to Bitcoin with seed phrases.
I do too.
Because AI could figure that out, right?
Huge question of, look, that you want to go doomsday on this shit. Like AI could break the entire financial infrastructure in an instant, and passwords, encryption, the whole thing.
It could also change that people can't lie anymore.
That's true.
That would be.
It's pros and cons, right? And it's got
to make you so much more productive.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like right now, my CMO says he's 10 times more productive because of AI.
Yeah, well, and it's figuring out where you can do that. Like, where can you get ahead? You know, on the legal stuff. I mean, I just negotiated a deal where I had to buy out some partners, and then I was bringing in some new partners. And I thought it should be pretty simple. When I got the bill, it was $90,000.
I'm feeling good about my 900.
Yeah. I know you said 900. I was like, bro.
It was just, but I mean, it was the simplest of agreements.
I know.
So it was a revenue agreement.
Yeah. At that pricing, guys, like big time firms, they're not going to be able to keep charging those rates.
No.
And I love that.
Yeah, me
I
too.
absolutely love that, because the last few years I've spent a lot
dropping your
of
dick on the table with your $90,000 there.
Well, this
Your little $12,000 pittance.
He's got to do something to put something big on the table.
well, this is the last thing that I want to be celebrated, guys. This is pain.
That's a lot of wine.
This is painful.
It's a lot of wine.
Yeah, and you know,
Not as much as a seller, to be clear, but
there is an argument to be made that you want to have the best legal advice, but yeah, to shortcut with AI and kind of get ahead.
I still want an attorney for, right now. There was an issue, I want someone to defend.
Yep.
But I don't want them doing the busy work and charging me their full hourly wage for it.
Yeah. And you didn't talk about title companies. I think title companies are going to the wayside probably sooner than anything.
Which is great news.
Yeah. Blockchain.
When you see all the title fees, how do you feel?
Ridiculous.
I'm always super annoyed.
I'm always bothered. It's, title insurance to me is a total joke. It's a total ripoff. And the fact that we're not more progressive in this sort of area, something as simple as deeds, who really owns it, and have it in some sort of centralized database.
I just like the thought of all the busy work getting eliminated, so we could have conversations, we could hang out. We're not,
I like that.
Yeah.
I'm all for that. Anything that enhances lifestyle.
Art's going to be, I think art's going to be good.
But people are still important, because when you have three people in a podcast instead of two, one can leave in the middle of it and go get bourbon. Yeah.
And get a frosty
glass bourbon
glass. I like that.
This is a different way to treat mold, by the way.
Yeah, no kidding.
You just kill it with whiskey.
Way different. That's what when
we drinking here.
Yeah, this is actually a gift from one of our banks.
I love it. I'll just show this off real quick.
Spree advertising.
When Garrett got in, he was like, yeah, I was at a wine tasting with Justin last night, but he was spitting out the wine because he's got this mold issue. And I was like, I have a mold issue too. And I just think that bourbon makes it feel better.
Well, I'm on a very strict protocol, as I guess we both discussed, for a year on a lot of it, but it'll be 4 months on, the whole comprehensive plan, maybe 4.5 or 5 months.
And he's worried about his pickleball game.
Yeah. Well, it's slowing me down.
Dickle.
Slowing me down.
I probably need to get on that plan. I will at some point.
I think it'll be helpful.
Yeah.
But it is crazy. Anything that can cause any sort of inflammation, it's just out the window. So alcohol, added sugar, gluten, dairy, corn products, rice products.
Yep.
Okay, fine. So let's talk health on that front then.
Yeah.
There is a question similar to when you talk about the financial balances of, I want to maintain my lifestyle, and do I get aggressive to make more money, or do I pull it back so that I can live the lifestyle I want to live? Look, there's no question that if you want to live the longest possible days, you can cut out tons of stuff.
Yeah.
And how does that impact your quality of life?
For me, so I got diagnosed with kidney disease in 2023, and it was pretty bad. So I basically went like, all right, whatever I got to do. My blood pressure was 192. I was like, got to figure this out. And it's actually been simple, because once I got over sugar, like part of my problem was not eating frequently enough, because I thought intermittent fasting was the best thing. And for some people it is. For other people, it creates cortisol issues. It creates, other issues. So I just ate as soon as I got up, and then I just had certain approved foods I could have. And so I just started saying, all right, now that I know what I'm eating, it's actually been really nice. And then now that my health's a lot better, I can introduce, I could just go have a meal, and it's no big deal. I take milk thistle and Nema base if it's a meal that's not ideal and it doesn't really impact me. And, I can look at my blood work, because your blood pretty much tells the truth about what's going on with your health. But before, what would happen is I didn't have enough of a plan. So I would get busy, and then I would get hungry, and then I'd make bad choices, especially later in the day. Now I don't have that hunger at night. So I don't have any bad choices that are tempting me. I could be in a hotel room with all the candies. Doesn't bother me at all. In the years past, because I wouldn't eat enough during the day or whatever, I'd be like, oh, screw it. I'd eat the M&Ms, and then I feel bad about it because I know it's not good for me. So if we're going out to eat, like when we went out last night, It was like everything on that list was pretty much approved. I just skipped the dessert and felt completely fine. Don't feel like it impacts my lifestyle. Now I have a house manager that makes a lot of my meals, so she's making it tastier because I just avoid salt and I avoid any inflammatory things. So it's more like sweet potatoes instead of rice, or it's meat and vegetables. So for me, it's been really nice. But if I wouldn't have thought that until I was on the plan.
I was at TED in Vancouver last week, which I've been wanting to go to forever.
How was it?
It's pretty disturbingly left leaning, and it's like coming, but like, we're in a weird world. And so it's gone into this sort of like aggressive, far edge. And I feel the same.
And the edge on both sides.
Absolutely. This isn't about left, right. It's like both sides on the far edges. It's scary.
Yeah.
And so there's a little bit of that. And amazing people. And like we've all seen TED Talks that you watch them and you're like, what the actual fuck? Like, I'm so glad that there are people that are doing what you're doing and focused on this. But John Mackey was speaking, and one of the things that he said at one point was, I don't know if he said it there or I heard it through context, but he said, it's interesting because people feel like eating these foods are going to pull away from the rest of their life. But once you condition yourself to eat foods that are actually good for you, you don't want the other things.
Right.
Yeah, like that's true of tons of
things. I've had pizza once in the last year, and I thought, oh, this is going to be a big treat. I've got all my old high school buddies up at the cabin, and I was like, gross. It just was gross. Yeah. Like, it was weird. I was surprised, and then didn't feel good.
Your body,
immediately inflamed.
Yeah.
Like I went to pull my rings off. My fingers are swollen. I was like, not worth it.
Well, and you don't notice that until you do an elimination diet, get it out of your system. Then when it's been gone for a while, you reintroduce it.
You've just been inflamed the whole time, right?
Before feels it. Right. Now you actually feel how, the impact that it actually has, which is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
And to eat really healthy in America is harder.
It is hard.
Yep.
It is harder. It's just, everything's so processed. There's so many things added to it. And so when I look at people that are struggling with it, I feel for them because, if you don't have a lot of wealth, it's even harder.
Or the education. Yep. You have to have the education and the money to do it. Right. So those are two hurdles.
Yeah. When I was young, I didn't even know the difference.
Right.
Like I remember
nobody did.
I started in the financial business and people take you out to eat all the time to court you. And like I'm eating creme brulee for the first time and all of a sudden I'm just gaining weight. And I'm like, what's going on? I was like, maybe you should go to the gym. And I was like, what?
I had a friend from Indiana, and I was,
I think I know this friend.
You do. Yeah. And I was like 22. And at this point, I'm on my health journey already, and I'm pretty dialed for what I thought was good at the time, right?
Yeah.
But I was at his house one night, and we're hanging out, and I was like, do you have any like vegetables? And he's like, yeah. And he goes to his fridge, and he comes back, and he had heated up some tater tots, and those were the vegetables that I was getting.
Tater tots.
But like legit, he thought that was like a vegetable. He was like, this is good.
It's a potato.
Yeah.
A deep fried potato. That's helpful for you.
Yeah. That's probably not actually potato anyway. I mean, there's part potato in there, but.
Right. Yeah. It just changes as your palate changes for sure. It's like when I first got married, my wife I was like, she just ate 5 of the most basic foods, and then I started taking her like to nice places. And the luxury once enjoyed kind of becomes a necessity.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
That's the truth.
Things change.
That's the truth. You got to be careful. That's lifestyle creep right there at its finest.
Yeah. There is also in almost all of those places, not almost, in all of those places, in nice places, there is an opportunity to be kind of a pain in the ass, but special order in exactly whatever way you want. And that can be as simple as like, give me the steak. Don't cook it in whatever shit you're just grill it in. Don't give me sauce. Just give me the fucking steak.
That's it. That's all I say.
And the meat's going to be amazing.
Yeah.
Like the quality of the meat is great in great places. And that's it.
So like once I got off salt and then I'd every now and then go to a restaurant and tell them to hold the salt, but they can't help themselves.
Right.
Everything tastes so salty that it's overwhelming. We just over salt everything.
Yeah.
Just table salt. So like your palate changes.
There's also table salt, and then there's like salt, right? So my parents actually told me this. So Morton's added iodine to their salt as a feature of salt in their youth. So when my parents were growing up, Morton's came out and they're like, there's iodine in the salt and it's beneficial for your health. Now the perspective on that now is that's fucking terrible.
Yeah.
Right?
I want to see what happens 10 years from now. We're going to find out cold plunge is the dumbest shit we've ever done. And I'm going to be pissed that I ate cold plunge.
I hope so.
Tons of shit like that. Oh, I love it. I've got 2 in the back here.
Yeah, I do.
Well, my son's like, I watched Huber and he says you only need 11 minutes a week. And I immediately went from like 3 to 5 minutes at a time to 2 minutes. I'm like, sweet, I'm going with that. I don't know if it's true, but that just sounds better.
Yeah. We'll know something different later. There are some things that are very clear, like, in the future, we're going to be like, what the actual fuck were we doing? A bunch of our surgeries, we're going to be like, we were fusing discs together. Like, what?
Right.
What? Clearly, that's the wrong answer, but it's the best thing we know how to do now. I'm optimistic of the next 5 to 10 on the medical front.
Oh,
like really highly optimistic.
Insert funny advertisement here. Or just check out Easy Pay Direct. It's epd.com/BAM. And you can find out about credit card processing for your business. Lots of our guests use us for credit card processing. And this seemed like more fun than writing a scripted ad.
You guys seen that they're like bringing back wolves from 10,000 years ago?
Yeah, I have.
Yeah.
It's wild.
Unbelievable.
So crazy.
Legit Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Right?
Yeah.
They're like, we're going to bring the woolly mammoth back.
I will say this is an area where I feel like there's outsized opportunities on the investment front too, right? So getting these cutting edge companies that are doing all types of innovative things in the world of science, in the world of health, in the world of longevity, in the world of robotics.
How do you pick them though?
That's tough. So, I mean, I like to look at the industry leaders in any given time, and I like to kind of pick the top 4 or 5 and distribute to all of them, right? And then you can see who the outliers are over time. And then if there's an idea with a company that's maybe emerging, that just, is kind of on its own where I feel like, they could stand out in time, I might put some money in there. But again, these investments all come from my surplus income, right? So it's all above and beyond.
It's like, no, you're looking for asymmetric type of situation. If you lose it all, it doesn't change your lifestyle.
Do you have a percentage allocation for that?
Well,
for
early
bets?
Early stage. So I really like to model after single family offices. So what billionaires do, that's what I want to be, I want to focus on that. They seem to be the best at it. So really it's about 1% in early stage, and it's about 4 to 10% in venture, which is, going to be starting around Series A. Call it 10 or 11%, somewhere in that 5 to, depending on how aggressive or not you want to be. I'm on the more aggressive side, so I'm probably sitting at 11%.
How much of it is it the right idea, the right team, the right processes, or just like the leader that
founder first,
like,
always founder first.
Like Michael Jordan comes to the Bulls are transformed immediately, right?
Yeah, I'm going to put my money on the jockey, 9 out of 10 times. And then hopefully it's the idea, parlays with that jockey.
That was Michael Milken's initial strategy with junk bonds. Is he go, who's a superstar at a small enough company? I can get really high interest rates, but it's not that risky because this is a superstar. And then what happened is he became so popular that there was too many funds coming in to actually fund superstars. And that's where he got in trouble.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because, it's like back in the day of, I don't even know if it's around anymore, but I remember Money Magazine, the best thing you do is see what they say is the best fund and then just short it the next year. Because they're going to get a huge influx of money. It's more than they can truly allocate. And now they're buying stuff that's not good because they have abandon their philosophy.
I think that's a huge takeaway, because that stuff is happening left and right now. And there are, if you listen to people that talk about kind of macro trends, you look at, can the market absorb it, right? And so there's a conversation around GPUs right now and compute power. And there was a huge, maybe perceived over-indexing on NVIDIA. So NVIDIA spiked and it's declining and leveling out maybe. But the hypothesis is kind of that, which is so much money raced to it that was it the right choice or not? People got excited and they were like, oh yeah, dump it in. But tech changes too.
Yeah, right.
So we'll see.
And location
of competitors come in.
Changes. Yeah.
Right. And you don't know who's
where's it being
trying to comes out with something
offshore, onshore. Yeah.
Well, I mean, yeah.
The worst example is crypto, where you just had people that were literally hiring people off of like 1099 websites to develop something, hype it up, and there wasn't regulation, so they were just cashing out, and then people had nothing.
Well,
it was just a story.
So that's a really interesting. This is an elaborate one that like you might have thoughts on, but it's are cryptos a security conversation, right? I.e., should they be a regulated asset class, or should people basically be able to gamble with them? And so you've got to divide between certain things like Bitcoin, Ethereum, the big coins, and then you've got meme coins.
Yep.
And meme coins are unequivocally gambling, right? Like they're gambling, but they're still perceived to be an investment by a bunch of people. So it should the government or somebody step in to help regulate that to prevent idiots from thinking they're investing in something?
Well, who funds the government because they're already strapped and not doing a good enough job with regulation? Right. So like they're already behind the times with stocks, with NASDAQ even. And now we're going to say, go regulate this other industry.
Yeah.
But that was pillaged by people that were like, cool, there's no regulation here. So it's easier to do an initial coin offering than it is an initial public offering. And we could just skim the crap out of that thing.
Yeah.
Well, IPOs are flawed, from the very get-go with the cost, the time, the difference, how you have to report moving forward. Like you are really hamstrung after you've sunk, $40 million in, and
what's your opinion on this? Because I think we're probably aligned, but I just think the stock market's irrelevant now. I think it was a brilliant idea initially. It's in the interest of building the stock market was big ideas require capital. And so they went public to raise that capital. No big company raises public capital. It's all private capital. At all. 100%. The only reason they go public is for one thing, to take money off the table.
Yeah.
So it's absolutely a problem because you have underwriters that have the interest of saying that it's going to be a valuable stock, setting the price based upon their own gains. If they don't,
let's back out of that and simplify that a little bit. Because if you're in that space or you're thinking about that, right away. But one of the things that frustrates me about business or has throughout my journey is it's hard to jump into conversations like this and hear those things and follow them if you don't have any of the context to the path. And like the person that's starting a company or at $1 million or 2 or 3 or whatever, and they're figuring it out, you missed 18 steps to get to actually that conversation. And the historical relevance of that is that 100 years ago, when people wanted to raise money, they did so through the public, and they did an IPO so that the public could invest in the company and they could grow. And today, in the last 50 years, specifically through Silicon Valley, I think, and you could add context to this, but venture capitalists, PE firms, et cetera, will dump money in to private companies that never hit an IPO. And so all of this money, like hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, get invested into private companies for ideas that aren't even making money yet. And then
media hype.
Yeah, media hype. And then they build. And then the thought is eventually you can go public. But the purpose of going public today isn't to raise money. It's that the founders that got involved in the first place can cash out. They can take the money. Basically, they can sell their shares, the available shares, to the public and pull that money back and say, hey, I made some money.
And let's make it worse. Well, there's only a fiduciary responsibility to the shareholder, not to employees, and not to customers, creating a conflict of interest of how the company runs.
Well, let's take it a little bit further, because 25 years ago, there were 10,000 listed companies here in the U.S. Now we're at 4,000 because it's hard to stay listed. So now you're at, so you have 4,000, right at 4,000 companies listed. When you have literally hundreds of millions of companies worldwide. So you can either go the public side of things, which is less than 0.1% of the total companies out there that are investable companies, or you can actually learn, create some expertise, find some people that have expertise if you don't have it, and invest on the private side where options are plentiful.
But you have to learn. And one of the challenges is if you want to get into the private markets, and said another way, if you want to invest in companies that haven't gone public, you need to do it through some other vehicle. And usually that vehicle is some fund that is raising money, and they are taking money to raise it. And so, Garrett, one of the things that you've talked about quite a bit is the problems with people that are selling mutual funds and all of the shit fees that go into mutual funds or stocks, et cetera, for somebody else to trade for you. They're the ones making money, not you. And the same thing can be true in the private market, because these funds take 2 and 20, and their incentive is to keep investing in new things, and they're taking that money they're 2% off the top all the time, no matter what.
And if you want to remove value to a customer, venture capital is probably the quickest way to do it.
Remove value from the customer.
Remove value from the customer, because it's all about valuation of the company, which often is make a shit of your product, water it down, move fast, and then exit it. But the other issue, there's so many issues that happen here. So this 4,000 issue that you're talking about, if you're a small company that goes public, you run such a major risk of getting shorted to death.
Yeah.
So what happens is you create artificial fear and pessimism around a small company, and you keep buying options that basically are put options saying when that company lowers value, you get that. The money goes to you. Because this is the entire crappy illusion that's not real. Hey, $1.5 trillion was lost from the market today. Not true.
Right.
It was transferred.
Right.
That money didn't evaporate. It went into someone else's hand.
Right.
Yep.
But people just go, oh, the market's down, and they just accept that as the truth.
Right.
And so I have a really close friend. They sold their business to a public company, small public company. They got shorted to death. So when they sold, the stock was worth like $3.50. It's now worth like 3 cents.
Oh, Jesus.
So this company they built, and they should have had $20 million they took off the table. They made $1 million on the whole transaction.
That's painful.
Because of that, the company being public. So you have, like with mergers and acquisition, like think about it, the sharks, all of those statements are true and real. And so that's part of the reason you see 10,000 down to 4,000. Obviously it's arduous and there's all these other rules, but the small companies are just bait.
So let's go tactical on this. So Justin, you spend basically now you spend a shitload of money so that other people on your team audit deals and figure out what's good and what's not.
Yeah.
How do you find the private vehicles that you can invest in to get into the private companies that are exciting in those spaces?
Well, it's all relationship based.
You got
to find the right people. You got to build a relationship.
You have a reach and reputation.
Yep. They have to want you in it because they don't need your money, right? They can find the money. So
You're bringing them ease, you're bringing them a community, you're bringing them, there's advantages, right?
That's right. So they're looking for smart money, and they're looking for relationships, and they're looking for people that can actually add, benefit beyond just the dollars. But this gets into the question of top quartile, bottom quartile. So, if we're talking about, the public side, let's look at mutual funds and ETFs here. Your top quartile is at 9.5%. Your bottom quartile is at 7.5%. So you got about a 2% delta there.
84% of the return in the market goes to 10% of the investors.
What the fuck are you talking about? Can you break that down a little further?
So your best performing mutual funds are going to perform, really about 9.5%. And then your worst performing ones are going to perform at about a 7.5%. So you got about a 2% delta there in that between good and bad managers.
For mutual funds.
Got it. So if you go over on the private side, let's just take private equity, which is going to be, later stage. Your bottom quartile is 4.3%. Your top quartile is 25%. So you're literally at a 20% plus delta.
It's a more inefficient market.
So said another way, mutual funds, it doesn't really matter. You're going to get a decent return. You're going to get a more stable return.
If I put money in mutual funds, which I don't, I just go index fund.
Index fund. If you're going to do it, index fund,
you're better off index than mutual
because they outperform money
mutual
managers.
fund with a fiduciary. Might be 2%.
Right.
Index fund might be 3 basis points.
Right.
If you look at that over 10-year period of time, it's a difference of getting $1 million and 200,000 return. That's the difference. People think, it's only a few percent. No, it's compounded in the cost. It's algorithmic.
So mutual funds, the delta is only 2% between the good and the bad ones, the good and bad performing mutual funds. All you need to pay attention to in mutual funds are fees, basically, because even if they're performing poorly, if they're taking 2% or they're taking, 50 basis points, 0.5%, huge difference. Private money, if you're looking at investing in a venture capital firm or a private office or a PE company, they could return 4% or they could return 25%. So there it makes a lot more sense to figure out
tens of millions of dollars or hundreds of thousands of dollars. That's the variance.
It's all about having the relationships, knowing the right people. And by the way, it's even more extreme on the venture side. So the earlier stage you go, the bigger the gap, right? So I think, bottom quartile on venture, I think is negative 7% return. And top quartile, I think is 27 or 28%. So it's the biggest.
Because they intentionally kill companies in venture. So this company's not performing as much. You're done. We're going with our pony over here that's crushing. So they might go, we're making 10 investments. We think that 1 is going to be a superstar. We think 2 will be okay. And we don't care what happens to the other 7.
Because that's the business model.
That's the business model.
And it's not even 1 in 10. It's
like
1 in
a credit
100.
card. It's like when credit cards first came out, they were pretty low interest. And someone at Harvard was like, you know what? If we just start charging 20 or 30%, the default rate exponentially goes up, but we still make more money. And that's similar to venture.
Yeah. So the question then, because the notion of it's all about relationships is super frustrating for somebody that's new and getting started, and doesn't have a network, doesn't have the opportunity, can't spend, a lot of money to be a part of Lifestyle Investor every year. So are there any other ways that you can find those good opportunities or audit or assess those and figure out, hey, is this a reasonable private investment to get into?
Well, I think that, first off, I think getting that investor IQ down and building a foundation, actually understanding what you're doing matters, before you ever put any money in anything. And we have so many free resources on that at Lifestyle Investor, the lifestyleinvestor.com/roadmap, like all kinds of things that can help people out in that. We're building a due diligence AI that's going to be able to spit out. I mean, we're already in the beginning stages and it's doing well, but we want to continue to iterate on it. So I do think that the AI is going to help in that, but it's AI is still so far away from being able to say, this is a good deal, this is a bad deal, here's the real risk, here's not. So you can't get that, but you can program these AIs to diligence in a way that you want them to be diligenced in. So I think that exists. But I also think that, so the shortcut often is money, right? It's like, how do I spend money to get access? How do I spend money for peer group or for a mastermind or for a mentor or whatever? And some people have to be willing to bite the bullet to do that if they're in a position to do it. And if not, well, then you're relying even more, I think, on your relationship skills, that you're offering enough value to someone else that they see value in bringing you into things.
There's a couple things that I'll just summarize here. What Justin just said was, if you have more time than money, you get the free resources and you build up the IQ. If you have more money than time, you buy your way into the relationship. So when I was 20 years old, I was at a university that we had a professor that retired as a fund manager at 53 years old. He managed $5 billion in municipal bond funds. And one day he just mentioned he wanted to get in better shape. So as a 20-year-old, I said, what do you like to do? He's like, I'd like to work out and play racquetball. I'm like, great, you have a partner. And when you're young, it's amazing how many people want to pay it forward. Yep. So I just got into rooms I didn't belong in when I was in my early 20s because I was just willing to be inquisitive and curious and had gratitude. And people like to kind of pass that torch. Now, if you're like in your 40s and you're just starting out, it's a little bit different game.
Well,
you're gonna have to put some grit.
Let me add another part to that equation, because yes, if you have a lot of time, you should spend it, sweat equity, learning, growing, etc. If you have a bunch of money, then you can spend money to do it. But the gap between those two is making more money. And so we were talking about this earlier, but there is a question of, when do you try to invest money for something and when do you make more money? And I'm so risk averse. I'm always looking at how to protect the likely best and the likely worst. How do I play into both of those? And so I don't go as heavy into like, fuck it all, let me just make a bunch of money. I'm always trying to control for it through the path. But there is something to be said for, don't worry about investing in anything and just worry about building your core asset, which is yourself and your core business or cash flow engine, so that you have money to invest in the thing later, invest in the relationships, the exposure, et cetera. That's been my approach.
The three things that you should do before growing your money is learn to make more money, learn how to keep more of the money you make. You just get more savvy at how do you save tax? How do you save interest? How do you remove non-performing investment fees? How do you design insurance properly? Then you figure, like, the whole time through, how do I grow myself? Because the more valuable you make yourself, the easier it is to build a network.
Yeah.
And part of that just comes down to, look, like when I meet with Justin, I might not know something that could help him, but I know someone who can. So literally he was like, oh yeah, this person that you introduced me to. So I'm always looking to make connections, and I don't care about getting paid on any of that. It's just, if I could be more valuable, then I build a relationship.
Yep.
And then you worry about when you've got those three things, and you never stop growing yourself. But then you go, all right, now that I've learned how to have a little financial intelligence, I've learned how to sell, communicate, market. Now it's, how do I grow my money?
Yeah.
And too many people want to just go and get Bitcoin at 200, and then they're mad that but like the people I knew that bought it at 200 were nerds, dude. Yeah. They were like tech geeks.
Also could have been very wrong.
Right.
Also, you were speculative as hell.
Right. But it was like part of their DNA to research it and to want to do, like when I was going to buy it at 300 and they wanted me to meet them at a McDonald's parking lot. I'm like, I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm out. Like that wasn't for me. So we just have to recognize, like, it's when people are fantasizing about being in that club of being able to invest, they're not thinking about actions they could take to get themselves there. And they look at someone who's already there. But when did you start investing?
Well, I started investing just in the stock market, not knowing anything that I know today, listening to the counsel that I had around me, when I was 18.
Right. Yeah. So like people are looking where you're at now, and they don't look at all the steps it took to get to this point.
Right. Yeah.
Well,
I've said this a bunch of times, but like I have a number of friends that are 10 years older than me and in a completely different financial situation. And I have to consistently remind myself, it's not my job to behave like these people, how they're living right now. It's to learn how they behaved when they were where I am right now.
Yeah.
Nice.
And it's such a relevant thing, because you look at people that are crushing it and then you try to model what they're doing in their life now. And it's like, no. They're so far beyond that, right? They've got stuff on autopilot, so they can go out and be a jackass.
I know people that all of us know that tried to invest with the big boys that were using their like 1% or 4 to 10% money with their core money.
Yeah, right.
And it destroyed them.
Right.
Because I'm like, whoa, you're over the wrong phase, and you're trying to do things. It's like going to the gym and never lifting and seeing someone lift heavy weights and think you're going to lift those heavy weights. There's steps to get to those weights, and it takes strength over time.
That's a great analogy. One of the things that I like about your stuff in general, Garrett, is that you have these concrete frameworks and very convicted beliefs around the frameworks. But those basic structures that are like, no, these are the building blocks and systems are, I think even if the building blocks and systems are flawed in some capacity, having a framework and structure to follow that is flawed is far more important than having no framework at all.
The biggest flaw with most people's framework is that they think passive income comes from being passive, not active. The more active you are up front, the more passive your income can become. But people want passive from the beginning. Therefore, they chase risky investments and lose.
Highest return. Yeah.
Like, let's just think about it. Just from a supply and demand standpoint, why would I be able to just go put money into something right now that would yield me? Like, I meet people that are like, dude, I found this guy's doing options. He'll make me 10% a month. I'm like, fantasy, never going to happen. Yep. I can promise you're going to lose 100% of it. Yep. And I'm like, let me just show you. I'll pull out a calculator on my phone. I'm like, let me put 10% a month in for 30 years. Tell me the smallest number you would put into this. And then I'm like, tell me what this number is on the calculator. You can't read it because it's not a real number. It's more than the money supply. I'm like, it's just, we want to believe the fantasy of the story more than we want to believe the work that goes into sustainability.
And I think one of the questions for that is, anytime you get one of those traditionally outsized return numbers, the question is, for how long?
Yeah, I mean, like,
and almost always when somebody gives you a number like that, you can, if you are patient. And one of the things that Justin and I have talked about quite a few times is, if somebody, and I think I probably have adopted this from you, is when somebody puts pressure on you on a deal, I'm out.
That's right.
Like if you have an urgent deadline, I'm out. I'm out. Okay.
I like that, because it's like, you don't want to be rushed.
No, I will not be rushed.
Right.
I will not be rushed.
I'm also like, if they can't explain what they're doing in a paragraph or less, it's fraud.
And so that's one of the things that I've gotten from you is, I think actually when you were on the last time we recorded on Beyond a Million, you said, if you can't break down your investment strategy in one page, I'm out.
Right. That's like, I think I learned that from just hearing Warren Buffett talk. And he made one of his biggest investments off a one-page document. And it was in the 90s where everybody's bringing him internet deals. Mm-hmm. And internet stocks aren't even around anymore. Back then, there was a thing called an internet stock. And they're like, this guy's an idiot. He's missing the boat. But he's like, no, it can't be described in a way that makes sense. So I'm out.
If I don't get it,
right,
I can't invest in it.
Or if I'm under duress, right?
Under duress.
If you are peppering me, if you are harassing me to get this done, how can I make a decision that's a non-emotional decision?
Like, risk is in the investor, not the investment. There's just risky investors out there. Mm-hmm. Some people are fantastic at real estate. Other people, they should never do anything with it. Some people are good at business. Other people aren't.
Well, let me say that another way too, because some people are fantastic in real estate and have a very high risk profile. And some people are fantastic in real estate and they have no risk profile or very low risk profile. And they can both be great. But if you aren't aligned with one or the other and you don't understand that you're getting into a high leverage, risky real estate proposition, then you probably shouldn't do it. Yeah. Like, I have found myself in a situation, I've found myself in all those buckets, right? Where you have somebody that has a good track record in real estate, but the way that they operate is misaligned with how I want to operate.
Yep.
And if you can see that on the front end and you can be patient enough to understand that, then you can pull away from it and say, I'm not going to get involved.
The cabin that you came to, I knew it was a good investment because I know the area.
Right.
I'd been researching areas around there for like the ideal cabin for 10 years. I got, the reason I bought the second one, it wasn't for sale. We just started hosting barbecues at my place and asking, hey, do you know anyone that's going to sell? And he's like, well, in 3 years. I'm like, what if I bought it now and then rent it to you? Right? Like it wasn't even on the market. And so it's Mongolian plumbing. So this is what Mongolian plumbing is. The Mongols go to Russia. They're fighting a war and they see toilets that you could flush. And they're like, damn, this is amazing. So they steal the toilets, bring them home. They didn't understand the plumbing. And that's how a lot of investors are. They don't understand all the unseen factors that make it sustainable.
I love that.
That's really good.
Well, I want to highlight something else, and now I'm just like fluffing both of you, but like legit, there are great things that I've gotten from knowing both of you from a financial perspective, great things from a relationship perspective, of course. But I was hanging out with Justin years ago, and we were talking about I can't remember if it was specific to this deal or not, but I'm driving around in beginning of COVID, and I see this empty lot for sale, like fucking downtown Austin, like downtown. And it's quote unquote overpriced. And I see it and I'm like, I need that. I buy it. So I buy it right away. The neighboring lot, he had segmented a giant lot, and he had segmented and sold half of it. And there was somebody in between. It doesn't really matter. But the other lot, quote unquote, wasn't for sale. And Justin said, well, do you have a relationship with him? And actually, it wasn't this deal. You told me this years earlier. But he said, you need to build a relationship with this person. And I learned it because I did this exercise with another person that didn't go anywhere with. And it was like this 85-year-old guy. I was trying to buy his building. And so Justin was like, we'll build a relationship with him. So I would go in and hang out with this guy. That one went nowhere. But I wanted this lot next to mine. So I spent 2.5 years drinking shitty beer and whiskey with the neighbor. And ultimately bought his lot.
Yep.
And it took a whole bunch of bizarre, conversation, nuance, but it was relationship.
Yep.
And he wanted it to go to somebody that he liked, respected, trusted.
Yep.
That's right.
And it took that time to build the relationship. And there is the adage of like, everything's for sale at the right price, but it's everything's for sale with the right person also, right? It's not just the right price, it's the right terms. And those terms include the relationship that you have.
Yeah. And I wouldn't have got the house that we're in now if it wasn't for that, because my wife's best friend is in our neighborhood and knew the person selling the home. And
it's a nice inn.
And I was like, and when we were the first ones to walk through the home, because we literally decided the night before we were going to sell our house, and this one came up. So we immediately went, and it had a swimming pool in it. And so my kids had a swimming shirt. So I'm like, I'm using my comedy charm. I'm going hard, but it was during a time where everything was going for more than was being asked. And an investor offered them cash. And I was going to finance. But it was because of my wife's friend being like, do you really want this to go to an investor in this neighborhood? Or do you rather go to a family?
Oh, damn.
I know the family. And so we ended up
and that made the
difference, right?
Awesome.
That's wild. That's wild, because usually cash just takes it.
And I just, I'm definitely like, when we walked and saw you, I was like, all right, I'm going to turn on all the charm in the world. Like, first off, she didn't have kids. So my kids were stressing her out. So I immediately was like, tomorrow, I'm like, get the kids, get them away from her. And I'm just going to talk to her. And we built a relationship. She was the owner and realtor, which helped.
So this is like a fundamental sales and marketing tenet, which is know your audience, right? And so like this applies to so many things in life, but this is a really good thing when you're going into any negotiation. If you don't understand the person that you're trying to negotiate with, and negotiates in this context sounds kind of like a dirty word, but like if you don't understand the motives and desires of that person, how could you possibly help them get what they want? And so
the values speak volumes to like, what do they ultimately want? Like, well,
and that's why I wanted to unwind
live life
negotiation, because the word negotiation can be dirty, but like really, if you look at it the other way, which is what you just said, which is how I look at it.
It doesn't have to be antagonistic.
No, look, there's no way for me to create a win-win-win if I don't know what your win is.
Yep.
Right. And so I can't do that until I know who you are, what you're about, what your values are, and what matters to you. And I might, by the way, find out that your values are so fucked up off of mine that there's no win for us. Right. Yeah. And then, okay.
And it's good to know that you're not just all in cash. You bought some land.
Well, I have a bunch of land.
Well, one thing about you, Brad, is you you generate your thesis. You do a lot of, diligence, you do a lot of market research, and you develop a thesis on what you think it's going to be. And then you go, 2 feet in, and that has served you really well. I've seen it over and over and over. And so, yeah, you might be sitting in cash more than you want, but I also know that you're good at deploying that cash when you finally find what it is that just really, your intuition tells you this is
I think
it.
people that wait for the deal and find it and stay patient. There was an article written in the New Yorker by Malcolm Gladwell. I love the title. It was called Predatory Investing. And he was talking about Ted Turner and how Ted would sit on piles of cash and then buy when everything was in distress.
Yeah.
And would even reacquire businesses he sold because then they would get into trouble. And he called it, but it was like the returns he was getting versus everybody else because he was willing to be patient and wait for the right deal. Yeah, really served him.
So 2 things. One, you have a ton of leverage when you're in cash, right? So sitting in cash, being like you said, you played it well to be able to buy something when somebody else came in cash.
I bought both my cabins for cash, and I had a lower offer, 50,000 less than the person that they didn't give the cabin to.
Wow. Yeah, so
but it was like I can close in 5 days.
Yeah. So the other side of that I want to highlight is just like the notion of predatory investing. I think that's a great headline, right? And catchy and whatever, blah, blah, blah. But like the fact of the matter is, it would just be stupid to buy it at the top of the market when you have a better macro approach and you can see it. It is just smarter to sit on it and wait. And in no way, if you do it right, in no way does it have to be a win-lose in the situation when the market's down and somebody has pressure and needs to sell. You can actually buy over market in that situation where they get a better win than they possibly
might have lost the whole thing.
And you get a better deal because you bought it at that time.
The worst case scenario with real estate is it goes to the bank.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be in the REO death trap that takes forever. And if they get something versus nothing.
Well, but that can go into the predatory consideration. What I was getting at was like, yes, and you can at the same time offer them more.
Yeah.
And you can still create a win where like they're getting more than anybody will offer them right now. And they don't go.
And they get out of their stress.
And they get a fucking killer deal. And you got a killer deal because of the timing.
Right.
And I think that's a beautiful reality if you have the thought process to do it.
And now could be a great time for that. With interest rates high, asset values are lower, there's less transactions taking place, there's a lot more negotiating ability.
100%.
And a lot of people are getting squeezed right now. You may not read about it, but I know tons of people that are like financially pinched. They owned assets. Now their assets own them. They did it with aggressive leverage. Now they can't cash flow it. And not just like big commercial properties. I mean, we're talking just like too many private residences or too many, whatever.
Just think about like in every wealth category too.
Yes.
You can have somebody that has one house. You can have somebody that has 10. But at every category, they could have just been over leveraged, or their lifestyle could have spun out of control, or the business could have been down, whatever. There are tons of these circumstances.
I know people that bought in Puerto Rico after one of the major hurricanes. And now, they bought properties for $2.5 million that are worth 10.
Yeah.
Because everybody's like, I don't want to touch that. But that's the time that they're like desperate and they want help. And if you can help them.
Well, and you said something that I think is important, and I don't remember the words, but basically terms is what I heard.
Yeah.
And that is right now we're in a place because interest rates are high that so many things you can suggest owner financing. You can suggest instead of me going out to a bank and getting a loan, the person that owns the property might be willing to just work out a deal where I just pay them for a while and I will pay them less than if I mortgaged it through a bank for some period of time. And they will be happy with it.
And it's non-recourse on you.
And it doesn't show up on your
credit score, credit rating. Yeah. It's powerful. The higher the interest rate, the more likely you will see seller finance. I mean, that is one of the big wins of this time, this season that we're in, is you will see way more seller finance. I've done a bunch of it over the years.
And if you got people that bought pre-2023, there's some amazing interest rates on there.
Dude, I had I'm not going to do this because it's still egregiously priced, but I just looked at a property on Lake Austin, and Lake Austin is unique because there are 240 homes in Lake Austin.
It's limited.
240.
Wow. Really limited.
And you've got all this big money coming in for all the tech companies, et cetera, right? And 240, historically, you might see...
And boat slips are even less than that, right?
Boat slips are way less than that. Because boat slips are now, you cannot put them in.
Yep.
So
you had to grandfather in.
You have to have them grandfathered in. So boat slips are super valuable. People will buy boat slips for $1 million, $2 million, $3 million for a fucking boat slip. Yeah. So I look at this lot, and it's like the trick with Lake Austin is it's the closest lake. It's a fucking river, but it's the closest lake to Austin. And the closest area is called Tarrytown, and it's legitimately 8 minutes from downtown. So you can have a lake house where you're actually still living in the community. Now, the next chunk up is like 15, 20 minutes from downtown. Now, if you go to the other side of the lake, it's 25, 30 minutes from downtown. And then you go up a little further and it's 35, 40 minutes. Now, you could say those are all nominal. They're not really. When you think about lifestyle, 8 minutes, you can be there in and out in the same day. 25, now we're like, yeah, you can be in and out same day. 35, 40, you're looking at kind of like a weekend thing, maybe. It depends on your lifestyle, right? But I look at this house and somebody bought it 2 years, not house. It's an empty lot in Tarrytown. So this is like the most desirable place you could possibly be on Lake Austin. 8 minutes from downtown at tops. They bought the lot 2 years ago for $13 million, and they bought it cash.
Wow.
Here's the thing. And this is why you need to know your buyer, know your seller, know your audience, right? Bought it for $13 million, but they bought it cash. Now that tells me things, right? They also don't live here. They wanted to develop the property. They went through all the shit to do it, blah, blah, blah. Now it's listed for 11.
Mm-hmm.
So they're just trying to get rid of it. So you look at these little signs and you say, okay, well, there's some leverage here. And then you think, okay, they're trying to get rid of it. What do they need it for? And that's a question. I don't know.
Right.
Will they finance? Will they not finance? Now, I still think that property in this current market, 11 million, is out of control for what it's worth. However,
undeveloped, vacant land.
Oh, it's also limestone, not a flat lot. You have to like do things. But, and if you actually want to make money on this thing, you really need to build it out to the fullest. You go highest and best use, right? Highest and best use on this thing is probably building like a $25, $30 million place. Mm-hmm. So now you're in just a different category of what you're building, right? And so I'm not my play right now. But you look at these things and you think, okay, if you just know the extra pieces of the person to negotiate the deal totally changes.
Yeah. Great points. I feel like that's a great ending point.
Yeah.
Know the person, get to know their situation, and, it gives you some, just some eyesight into things that you otherwise maybe wouldn't have known, that another buyer wouldn't know. I love that. And I hope at some point you buy that property on the lake.
I will. It's probably not that one right now, but yeah, unless you want to buddy up on it,
That one's tough. I don't know.
It is tough.
I mean, I would rather take a nice home already done, already has the boat slip.
It's legit what I told her. I was talking to the seller, the realtor, and I was like, I don't need a fucking project right now.
Because whatever you think you're going to pay for building.
Yeah. And how
be a lot more.
You think it's going to be
longer, the whole thing. This is fun, boys.
This is awesome. Yeah, we could do it. Thanks for coming into town, Garrett.
Thanks for having me. Thanks for hosting.
Always good to see you.
Cool.
Sweet.
My director of marketing told me to read this. Thank you for tuning in to Beyond a Million. If you liked this podcast, please subscribe and drop a comment below. We'd love to know your thoughts. If you want to learn the strategies that our guests such as Neil Patel, Amy Porterfield, and Grant Cardone use to scale their business, you can find more episodes on our website at beyondamillion.com.